Good evening. I will call to order the Finance Committee meeting on November 14, 2022 at 7:05 p.m. We have one item on the agenda this evening. It's a proposed amendment to City Code Chapter 125. The item on the agenda this evening is order number 22-100-8701. Communication from Mayor Vigent with a proposed amendment to City Code Chapter 125, Personnel, Section 6, Salary Schedule and Proposed Job Description pursuant to Chapter 125, Personnel, Section 5, Preparation of Classification Descriptions to create a new position entitled Treasury/Payroll Manager within the Finance Committee. I will begin by reading the letter submitted by the Mayor. Honorable President Ossing and councilors, I'm submitting for your approval a request to create a new position in the Finance Department, Treasury/Payroll Manager. This non-union benefited 40-hour per week position would report to the Finance Director, Patrick Jones, and may take directions from the Assistant Finance Director. As explained in Mr. Jones's letter, the city requires a position to coordinate and implement workflow in the Treasury office, including payroll and cash management. This position will provide for additional oversight for new software applications such as OpenGov and Stripe, finance application to receive payments, to name a few. We've been evolving our technology over the last few years, and it's necessary to have a payroll specialist in-house who can problem solve with workable solutions. This position will serve as an advisor to the city in the collective bargaining process, costing out proposals and advising management on collective bargaining proposals and their costs. Enclosed is a job description and ordinance amendment with the salary table for your review. The majority of this position will be funded from a vacant position within the department. I anticipate needing an additional $30,000 that will allocate with the current budget. To avoid delay, I plan on advertising this position, and the job description will include pending council approval. Patrick Jones and I will be available for future meeting to discuss more in detail. Thank you in advance. Sincerely, Arthur G. Vigent, Mayor. Good evening, Director Jones. Oh, Mr. Mayor.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and members.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor.
I'll just do a quick overview before I turn it over to Mr. Jones, but this is really a position that I've kind of been looking for a number of years through Tom Abel and through Brian Donahue and now Mr. Jones. The opportunity came up when we're down to 2 people in the payroll department, but we really don't have a person that's a payroll specialist, someone that knows payroll. We have a couple people in the department that do a good job in consolidating and entering all the data, but when it comes to actual payroll questions, anyone that's in the business knows that payroll changes regularly. Really regularly. I mean, someone that, if you work with ADP or any of the payroll companies, they have specialists on duty because it changes so often. So we just thought it was a good opportunity at this time to make a run to see if we could get the position and then get it filled with someone that has a good payroll background. And again, we're talking about a payroll manager to oversee the 400 or so employees we have here on the city side to make sure things are entered properly. Are there other opportunities for us to streamline something in our system or offer something different that we did before? We've gone to biweekly payrolls. We've changed some of the benefit structure. We actually have an additional benefit coming out in the next few weeks that we're going to be announcing. So we're hoping to add some of these things along with our new HR director, working with the payroll department obviously overseen by Mr. Jones. But that's where this came from, and I just think it's a good opportunity to do that. With that, I'll turn it over. I don't know if you have something to add, Patrick, before we take on questions.
Sure. I would just like to add that payroll is a major component of it. Treasury actually has cash management, and the collector's office uncommitted is about $20 million. So at a $180 million budget, you're looking at almost $160 million that flows through our Treasury division annually. And the reason why I think it's important is because, as I've stated in my letter to the mayor, we have various softwares that didn't exist when I started here just a couple of years ago. Munis, which has been in municipalities, has gone to Windows-based. We have OpenGov. We have various softwares, and we'll be seeing more, that require a certain level of automation knowledge. And a lot of people think sometimes when we automate that it should accelerate items, and it does, but not at first. We just put vision because it's said in our letter and others. We put vision in the assessor's office, and let's just take that for one quick second. There was probably, if somebody came to the window in the assessor's office and handed you a piece of paper in the old Munis system, you could step away and put it in the system in four strokes. But once that went Windows-based and they automated it, it now takes 14 windows, because sort of for every step you go forward, you have to take a couple back. They move it to a new platform, and then eventually those 14 steps will go away as they do patches and upgrades, and it'll become more seamless. But in the present time, with all of the automation changes and the changeover of staff in the city, Ralph is just our payroll is just not handling the 400 that the mayor has mentioned, but we also are the final part of the school payroll. And so we're really handling all 1,100 to 1,300 employees in the summer when we're full force. So there's quite a task to be put onto the Treasury office for the two individuals that are down there.
Two last points I just want to bring up, because it was kind of interesting during COVID. I realized we really had two people in the entire city that were running payroll. It was a scary time. We tried to get someone that retired to come back and be a backup. We split that office so neither one of them are in there at the same time. It really, it was a scary time, but we were able to get through it with their support and their work. But since then, we've obviously, now we have Mr. Jones that knows it, and we're gonna have another person that fills in. So we'll have some redundancy on it. The other thing I want to bring up is back when Mr. Donahue was here, one of my directives to him was, let's outsource payroll. I just thought it was something that we could outsource. They'd be able to take care of it. The big payroll companies, as I say, they have people on staff you can talk to at any time if you have payroll issues or questions. But because of the complexity of mostly police and fire and payroll, and the number of line items that we calculate for them each and every time we do a payroll, it was virtually, it was gonna get very, very difficult, and we weren't gonna save any money, and it was gonna be more confusing. So I backed off of that. It's been a few years now, but I think, again, I still believe we need someone that knows payroll and is a payroll manager. So, with that, we'll be happy to take any questions from any of you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I will open up to finance and the rest of the committee. It may be on the early side. Have you looked through the budget and see where you're going to make up the 30K at this point? Or is it too early in the process?
Well, we've had a vacant position
Correct,
for a
correct.
while, but you know, we're down to half the year by the time we get someone down there.
Yep.
So we'll be looking to add to the payroll line item, but we may be doing some transfers in there. So.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll open it up to the committee and then, Council Orem.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The question on the department itself within payroll, so right now you have a payroll clerk, Anyone else involved with payroll except for the payroll?
Right now,
clerk?
we, in the department, we have 2 finance assistants, and those have been that position for a while. One's been there for many, many years, the other one probably 5 or 6 years now. And then we have a principal clerk.
We have a principal clerk who was promoted, well, moved on. A position opened and they moved.
To a different department.
So you're at 2 at the present time?
That's correct.
Which is reasonable, but limited. As you said, during COVID, I can promise you, the last thing an employee wants to hear is that their check's not in the mail, quote unquote. It's not in the mail on through their transfers of monies during an issue such as COVID, because maybe 2 of your staff members were out with COVID. So I support this, especially the process of continuation of operations, the urgency for that, as we learned through COVID, as the mayor just said. You were critically in a shortage, it sounded like, during COVID. So, you know, if there was another issue that might involve a virus, one person could be out of the office while the other one's in there. But the need for that redundancy is so important, and very, very important. I mentioned it through the trainings I've taken with continuation of operations, the importance of payroll. You think of fire, police, health, but you got to remember, you got to operate the entire city. So I support this. I think it's a great idea, and I think it will help with the continuation of operations. So thank you both.
Thank you, Councilor.
Council Perlman?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Mr. Mayor and Mr. Jones, for sharing that background and providing the documents for this item. I am in support of it. It sounds like it's really needed to sort of have that integral member of the team who can oversee the process, and I appreciate that there's kind of more individuals learning payroll so that there is that kind of institutional knowledge being shared across the employees. My question is around the pay structure that you have set up. So I'm wondering, given the amount of experience that is required and sort of recommended in the job description, if this will be a competitive salary to hire a candidate, and if there are comparable positions in other communities that you took into account when establishing this number.
I did. What I went through is a comparative to other communities about our size. I took into account that they might have had a different structure, but looked at the skill sets and the expectations on the position. We hope it's extremely competitive. I think we can get a very good, viable candidate with it.
Okay, that's great to hear, because I know in the past sometimes we've had to come back to raise the salary, and you know, it's an unfortunate market out there, right? There's not a lot of people going into municipal government, right? We need more people doing that in general, but also there's retirements, and other communities are also trying to find candidates. So I know it's a very challenging market. So please keep us posted, you know, if you're able to hire someone or if you need more support from the council.
No, and I can't guarantee you right now that won't happen. We're not anticipating that. We're hoping we're in the market. By the time you get the comparisons and you go to hire someone, everyone else has already gone up a little bit. And the MMA, along with the governor's office, the lieutenant governor announced the other day that they're going to be doing a municipal finance program with one of the community colleges to try to train people for the finance area and government, because we can't find people that know municipal finance, and obviously this is a big part of municipal finance, because our pay structure is different than the average Joe out there with the 457 plans and the city and state retirement systems, and some things we can offer that others can't offer. The state has passed some rules that, you know, the companies have to follow, but we don't have to follow unless we accept them. So it does get a little confusing, but the state's actually finally recognized we're having issues. My encouragement to the lieutenant governor was, don't stop there. Grab a different community college and do an HR program, and do another community college for maybe management level people. You know, let's expand this to do a little bit more than we're doing right now, because finding municipal courses is very, very difficult.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That is true what Lieutenant Governor Polito said, to advocate for that. That's, I think, an issue moving forward, that municipal law, municipal government, it's a whole different sector, and trying to get qualified people in, to have that experience going forward is a difficult task. And I know you've probably heard me say this many times, but we're going forward and creating new positions. I still feel that in a couple years, we're looking at positions that we already have that may be underpaid salary-wise, and that could be an issue. I know a lot of people are saying it's because of anticipation of retirements, which is part of the problem. But another part of it is getting younger employees in municipal government to have that experience. So that is a concern I have moving forward, that it's nice to create positions, but we do have some positions here in the city that probably in about 2.5 years may be very underpaid.
And to follow up on that, I know Councilor Oram brings that up often when I'm down here with these changes, but I had charged the former HR director with coming up with a salary survey for all our positions. She's moved on, it hasn't been done, but it's gonna be job number one for the new HR director. At this point, like you said, I'm doing the one-offs. As someone leaves and I'm looking at the position, does it fit in line? Because we did, most of you probably weren't here, but we did a complete overhaul, I wanna say like 6, 7, 8 years ago,
Yeah.
where there was some substantial raises giving out along the way, because we wanted to keep the people that were here and not just think about the next person after them. We wanted to take care of the actual employees. So charge number one for the new person is gonna be to finish that salary scheduling and get it down, so we can hopefully start using that and make some adjustments.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, because now we have a wonderful team, atmosphere, a wonderful team of employees that come in every day, and I'll go to Councilor Doucette.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I completely support this. I think having someone dedicated for this operation is critical to considering it is mission critical for the city to make sure we come up with the salary and payment. But in any case, one of the things I've noticed as far as the new technologies that's being introduced that you guys are taking advantage of, there's always a training curve as well. Whatever tools that these folks are using, if you go with the assumption that you find someone that has experience with that version of the tool, there still has to be regular training, almost, a couple of times a year, workshops and things to understand, what the new features are coming in and stuff like that. I just want to make sure that the training is also taken into account as part of this as well, because that's going to have a cost to it. That we send the person who's getting this job, to the proper workshops to get trained on this stuff as well. I just want to raise that as an issue that needs to be taken into account as well.
Thank you, Councilor Doucette.
Thank you.
Councilor Roby.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mayor and Mr. Jones, for coming down and explaining this to us. I know very little about payroll, but understand the complexity that must be there. And I guess I'm curious about one of the specific lines in the job description, to ensure that the tailings list is maintained on a quarterly basis. What is a tailings list?
So a tailings list is a vendor check that when, companies move or things change, and when you issue a vendor check and it gets mailed, sometimes the sending party, in this case, it would be the city of Marlborough, that address was never updated. So the check gets there, but maybe it sits on someone's desk or got attached to another file. It never gets cashed. The check never gets cashed. So the goal is that what you should do is relieve that from the payable system within a timely fashion. It becomes an audit issue at the year end because they ask the city or any customer for their list of outstanding checks. So what you do is you stay on top of those so that we are proactive in recognizing that a check hasn't cleared our bank and has been sitting out there or could have been lost. It's also a good element just to keep an eye on fraud, because you keep an eye out there to make sure that the check doesn't end up in someone else's hands. Someone could say we never received it. And so it's really just a verification process to clear something through so that it doesn't stay lingering out there in a black hole.
Okay, yeah, I certainly understand checks that haven't been cashed. It's
It's
on a
kind of
personal
funny
level.
because it hadn't been a big issue with the finance department for a while. When Steve Cirillo came in and helped us out for a while we were looking for someone, that was one of his huge issues. You have all these accounts out there and all these outstanding checks that are hanging out there that, for the most part, have to be replaced. And when they stagger 2 different fiscal years, it becomes an issue. So staying on top of it is pretty important. So less important than someone like me that writes, 25 checks a month. If someone comes chasing me for an outstanding check after 6 months because it's no good anymore, I write another check. Here it gets a little more confusing.
And I guess my other question is again clarifying, this seems to be talked about as a supervisory position, so exactly who would they supervise?
It's supervisory and managerial, I believe, are interchangeable. So they will manage the process, and then they ultimately will implement and manage the team. So they would manage the payroll individual, then the cash individual, and oversee both of them as well.
So there is not a plan to add more staff under this person?
No, at this time, with all of the automation, so in the last 6 months, we've gone from OpenGov to Stripe. We're implementing time and attendance, advanced scheduling. We have another software that's sitting in the wings. We just got Vision. I need all of that dust to settle, and I need to revisit all of this before I even think about how I'm going to work around that. And right now, in speaking with the mayor, the critical element was support above so that I could get support in trying to get all of this to streamline.
And then finally, Mayor, the letter from you came back in October and you indicated you were going to advertise this. So has that happened? Have you gotten candidates at this point, or is that?
We actually, when I actually held off advertising because I was not sure that the position would be pushed, and I didn't update you on that.
The timeline, if we advertise right away, this has been a little bit going through the process. Those resumes would have been stale, we would have been back out again. So again, I keep an eye on the outstanding jobs that are in the state to see, a 20 people hiring an HR director or a payroll specialist or something like that. But as soon as the next step takes place, if I see support from this committee, my guess is we'll get right out there immediately.
All right, well, hopefully that'll happen, and we'll see who wants to come to Marlborough.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Dumas.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So just to clarify, this is not replacing the principal clerk. We just won't be filling that role any longer, correct?
It's not replacing it. What we're doing is we're taking the opportunity so we had a principal clerk in there for a couple of years. I made those observations. I watched how the work flowed and the gaps that were still existing and what needed more attention. And when the principal clerk left, I used that to seize that opportunity to bring it up to the mayor, to strategize, to think how we could really address the bulk of some of the issues. And we want to sort of work with this position, and because it may mean later that the positions that are going to come in might not be a principal clerk, it could be a senior clerk, because there's a lot of automation and there's a lot of need to restructure the processes. So it's hard to envision what we're going to do there. We're not eliminating, we're just sort of got that part on hold now.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you, Councilor Dumas. Councilor Landers.
Just a quick comment, Mr. Chairman. John, I'm curious. First of all, I'm going to support this when it comes on the full floor. I think this position is absolutely necessary. You skipped over the school department a little bit. Do they data entry their payroll and then you process it, or how does it work?
So how the school department works is there's 3 elements to payroll. There's the whole time entry process. Then there's the middle part where they've got all of that payroll that comes in and gets to fruition, which generates time sheets and all checks. And then after that, there's the whole reporting mechanism. So what the school does is they take care of the input of all of the time. They get it to the level of submission where it gets ready to be put in the system. And then the city takes over after that happens. And we actually push it through, and then do all the reporting. So their 941, for instance, which is a quarterly report for payroll, is included, with ours.
Right, very good. Good point. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councilor Henderson. Councilor Orm,
If there's-
any further questions? Oh, Councilor
I
Orm.
was going to say, if there's no further discussion, I'd like to motion to approve order number 22-100-8706-01. That's my motion.
I will second that. Motion has been made and seconded to approve order number 22-100-8701, proposed amendment to City Code Chapter 125, Personnel Section 6, Salary Schedule, and proposed job description pursuant to Chapter 125, Personnel, Section 5, Preparation of Classification Descriptions, to create a new position entitled Treasury Payroll Manager within the Finance Department. Any further discussion? Councilor Dukes.
Just what's the timeline? Do we need to suspend the rules, or?
I was just looking to find out about the advertising.
I was gonna, thank you, Councilor. My goal was to, if this goes forward, to report it out, and as a report, I will ask for suspension to advertise.
That would be great, Council.
Good point,
Thank you.
Councilor Dukes. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? All opposed? It carries 4-0. I will entertain and if it's all right with the committee, we will ask for suspension at the report.
Motion to adjourn?
I will second that. Motion is made and seconded to adjourn. All in favor? We are adjourned at 7:32